Hopefully everyone can hear us okay. Perhaps the first thing to do is before you enter the 3 to see whether everything was working, maybe you can put in a 1 to 10 on your scale of knowledge of Google Analytics, just to give us a quick sort of overview of who's actually listening and what your level of knowledge is. So 1 being really bad, 10 being really good. Go. Can you perhaps put that in the chat box, or from ranging from 1 to 10? That's all right. We seem to not quite get the answers, but that's okay. We'll continue with the presentation. All right. There will be a slight lag in the slides loading. So after each slide, we'll wait for about 10 seconds before we start speaking. So hopefully everyone's got the first slide up about what does Google Analytics actually do. Well, I guess it's a bit of a monster, and it does a lot. Probably way too much, and if you really dug into it, there would be just a full-time job in just using the tool. But in broad terms, it provides a good knowledge of what actually happens on your website. Most importantly, where are visitors from? What are they doing whilst they're on your website? How long are they there? And if you are in the e-commerce business, it allows for a lot of tools about whether people are buying, whether they're not, whether they are leaving the site, or whether they are leaving a shopping cart and they're not checking out. So there's a lot of things that, especially in the e-commerce world, are very, very useful. But also in the world of news sites and blog sites like the extensionAUS website. Just click to the next slide. So the basics of Google Analytics, and this is just a little bit of technical knowledge. It's free. Google provides it for free, and we all know why they do that for free. But it creates a snippet of code that's loaded on a website. If you have another website yourself, you can create that code quite easily through Google Analytics, and that code just needs to live in the right spot on the website. That code is the basis of everything. It tracks all the activity on your website, or on a mobile app, or whatever property there may be. So the good thing is, it's all been installed on the extensionAUS website, and as well on the Community of Practice subsites. So data has been collected from the moment that the code was inserted or installed, and there'll be a lot of data there already. As mentioned, it's a powerful tool. Google Analytics, once you get into the back end, there is a lot there, and it's easy to get overwhelmed, and more importantly, it's easy to become trapped in analysis paralysis. So let's really focus on what is the information that's really applicable to your specific requirements and needs, and what will really help you work out what works and what doesn't on the website. So I'm going to just go quickly through some of the basics, some of the basic terms that can be a little bit confusing at times. So once you sort of get the hang of the terminology that Google uses, it's quite easy. So first up, there's a Google account, and a Google account you can make on google.com, and most of you probably have one of those. It provides you the access to the Google Analytics suite, and yeah, I guess it actually allows you to use it. Within that, within your account, you can create properties. Now, properties can be the website or sub-sites. In your case, the extensionAUS is one property, and then there's multiple others for the community of practice sub-sites. So each site has their own tracking code, and that's all been installed, so it tracks specifically for those sub-sites the activity. And if you were to go to Google Analytics and log in, and this is what you would see. On the left, you see your account, then you see the properties, and then you see the views within those properties, and we'll get to what views are a little later. So once you make your way to Google Analytics, you'll see some very frequently returning sort of terms. Obviously, users, which are the visitors, and that's measured by the IP address that users are using to visit the property, i.e. the website. There'll be sessions. Now, a session is a group of activities that may take place on your website within a certain time frame. So any particular user can have multiple sessions. And one session ends, another may start. It all depends on what they do, whether they're leaving and coming back. So a user may be a returned user with another session. Session duration is obviously the length of the interaction of that user for that particular session. Another one that comes back frequently is page views. Which pages on your property or on your website are viewed within the session? And then obviously there is the metric of page views per session, which is a very handy one to see how many pages a user actually views each time they're on your website. Now, bounce rate is an interesting one. There's a lot of debates about what is good and what is bad, but it basically tells us it's the percentage of people that arrive on a page and leave from that page, so they do nothing else on the site. A high bounce rate may indicate problems, but it's not necessarily the case, and we'll get to that in a little bit later. So then there is some things that you need to know about breaking down data. Within a Google property, you can create a view, which is initially just the same as all website data that it collects. But within a view, you can then filter and segment data. And filtering is a very handy tool to exclude certain data to be analyzed. For example, if you don't want your own visits to your own website to be part of the analytics data, which obviously could be handy for an office that has lots of people accessing the same website, that would really skew your data as far as, you know, is that outside traffic or not. So you can exclude IP addresses or exclude domains. Segments are interesting if you're interested in working out, okay, which users are from New South Wales, which users are from Victoria, if you really want to go down to that level. So you can set up specific segments and analyze all that data coming out of, say, particularly New South Wales or Victoria or Western Australia. So they can be set up, and just towards the end of this presentation, you'll see a little bit on how you can do that. So when you first log in, you'll arrive at the admin section, which is the little settings thing at the bottom, the wheel admin, that shows the account, the property, and the views within that particular property. I've done this for extensionAUS. It's just a screen grab. There's nothing exciting, but obviously this is where all the stuff is managed. People can get access to the account, but you can also have users for the property only, or even further below. This is where you would set up your views, and this is where you would set up your segments and your filters. So in short, I guess something to just get a grip of, got a handle on. You'll have an analytics account which can have multiple properties. which can have multiple views with various filters and segments. So you can really drill down on how you want to dissect the data that's coming through from, say, one particular website. One account may have, in our case, we have hundreds of websites that we track. So multiple properties within our own analytics account, and within those properties we can create views and different filters and segments to really drill down on certain data for certain clients. I've quickly just done that again, so you see how that would work for extensionAUS. I've grayed out the other boxes because they are some of our own accounts. But there you see on the left-hand side the Google account, extensionAUS, and then in the middle the properties, extensionAUS practice, the extensionAUS website, the main website, irrigating agriculture, Victoria Food Innovation, and Victoria Rural Women's Network. And on the right, the views within that particular property. Now, each of your Google Analytics accounts and properties have got one view, which is all website data right now. I don't think anyone has, I didn't see any views. I don't think there are any there, but they can certainly be created. Now, accessing the data, how do we get to it? There's two ways, and I'm not sure exactly what everyone has been provided access to. There's a very basic way via the back end of the CMS that handles the website, which is WordPress. I'm not sure whether that's relevant or not, but I put it in. If you have access to the back end of the website, you can see the Google Analytics dashboard. You can click on show more details to expand it, and it'll provide you some basic data. It's very basic. In the top and left-hand corner, you have to make sure you're on the right site if you want the analytics for any specific community of practice or extensionAUS. But once you've done that, you will get something that looks like the next slide, which is a very basic overview. It's an overview of the last 7 days of visits. It gives you some insight on users, on page views, on pages per session, and on the bounce rate. It also gives you a little bit about the traffic sources, where's the traffic coming from. So it's very basic, and I guess it's a very, very high level view on what happened over the last 7 days on that particular website. All right, so the more exciting way, and the more those that are into heavy analysis of what's going on is obviously via analytics.google.com, using your Google account, which will, provided you've been given access by the administrator, will take you to your analytics dashboard, which will look something like you will see in this screen. There's a whole heap underneath, which will come on the next slide, but that's the home dashboard, so to speak. And it gives a high-level overview of a lot of things. That's all already set up, so any account that you would create will come with that automatically. That's already there. You can actually change the dashboard if you like, but most of the important stuff is already there. And from there, you can drill down, or you can go to any of the other options on the left-hand side to really start drilling down on some of the data. As I said, there's another screen underneath that there it is, that shows what pages have been visited, what's been trending, what time of day, users, times. There's a lot of stuff. Obviously, what's getting more and more important is to know how people are accessing the site. Are they on desktops? Are they on mobiles? Or on tablets? I guess quickly we can see here that for extensionAUS, 73% are on a desktop, 20% are on a mobile, and 6.8% are on a tablet. So when it comes to web design or future enhancements of the website, that's good to know. Given the fact that most of the use comes from a desktop, it's good to focus on the desktop. Thank you. All right. So sometimes the question we get is, all right, in all these figures, what is good and what is bad? Well, common sense prevails, and it all depends on what you want the visitor to your website to do. And I think I used the example of bounce rate before. Is the high bounce rate bad or good? Well, that depends. Bounce rate on a new site like extensionAUS may not be that bad, because someone may go to an article, read it, and leave again, because that's perhaps all they were interested in. But if you wanted to do them, if you want people to do more than that, then it may be bad. And we wanted to certainly look at ways of lowering the bounce rate. But let's look at the actual analytics, and I'll grab some screenshots today, in particular of audience acquisition and behavior, and later on also quickly how you can create views, filters, and segments. So the first one on the left-hand side, you'll see audience. Now we have to be mindful that not for every property within the extensionAUS website this has been enabled. I think there was one or two where it was, and a couple of others where it isn't. So we can always obviously switch that on, but it'll give you a lot of detail about obviously the people that are, or the visitors that are coming to your site. And as you can see here, over a specific time period, which you can change at any given time, to 1 day, multiple days, you're completely free in selecting the date range you'd like to view data in. You can, I guess, very much see how many users, how many sessions those users have had, how many page views, what pages. There's a lot to drill down on. Obviously, this is a presentation, so I can't actually drill down on some of it, which would be really nice. But I guess you get the gist of what Google Analytics provides when accessing this data. Here on the left, there's a lot of stuff that you can go into, which provides detail on demographics, on interests, and again, sometimes very relevant for certain websites or businesses, for others not so much. Yeah, so there's a lot we can talk about here. I always found the interesting one, obviously, bounce rate, which indicates here 60%. So 60% of the users leave on the site they arrived on. However, generally a session lasts for about 4.5 minutes. So that indicates that they come, they spend 4.5 minutes on a page, and then they leave. So that's not necessarily bad if it takes 4.5 minutes to read an article, for example. So before you make real decisions on what is good and what is bad, you probably have to drill down a bit further and really get to the nitty-gritty of which pages have been visited and why were they in there so long or so short. This one is the one that personally I work a lot with our business, but also obviously for e-commerce type businesses, and that is how do we acquire users, where are they coming from? Very important, especially if you're spending money on AdWords and social advertising and that sort of stuff. In extensionAUS case, a lot of it is direct, so that is just straight from Google, typing in extensionaus.com.au. Organic search, that is people searching within Google for extensionAUS. And then there's referral and social. So some come from social channels in this case, but not a lot, 5. Some have been referred from other websites, 7, but the rest is very much organic. So that's, I guess, very handy insight. Yes. Yeah.
So one point of that, we'll just pause there for a second, and if anyone has any questions with what's been covered so far by Peter, just pop them in the chat box. We're using the slides are taking screenshots of different parts of the extensionAUS backend or the Google Analytics. But obviously it's only some sites. So that example that Peter showed was a home page for extensionAUS. Your own communities of practice will have different acquisition ranges. So for instance, some of the extensionAUS communities of practice are very active on their social media, and they'll have up to 30 or 40% of their acquisition is via social media. So it's really important that you drill down into your own back end and look at these figures that have been provided by example. If there's any questions at the moment, just pop them in and we'll cover those. Nothing yet, so we'll proceed. Thanks, Peter.
Okay. So the next one, obviously very interesting, which is behavior, and that really shows us when people are on your website, what do they do? Where do they go? What pages do they visit? What's their movement? Obviously here you can see within the same period, that 7-day period, we've had 327 page views, 185 unique ones. So some people have visited the same page multiple times. They spend about 3.5 minutes on average on a page, and the bounce rate again is 59%. On the right here, we can see what pages they actually are. So the very first one, 259 page views, is the home page, which makes up 79% of the visits for extensionAUS. And then there is about contact. There's 9 views of the actual disclaimer, 2 of robots.txt, so that's one that you could filter out. That is one of the Google ones, and so are the 2 underneath. So there are ways of eliminating some of these. And then here, 1 page view on the Black Spot Manager for field piece, is that right? And 1 on migration and 1 on the field crop nutrition. So, nutrition?
Irrigation.
Oh, irrigation. There you go. On the right-hand side, on the bottom here, you can also click down and view the full report. So there'll be more pages, but obviously there'll be a lot of ones until they add up to 327. But the interesting one is actually the next one, and that's one that we use a lot in our business. And that's the behavior flow. So where do people arrive and where do they go from there? And again, may or may not be so relevant for you, but for other businesses, especially e-commerce, this is very interesting, especially when we use landing pages for campaigns to see whether people are actually then going on to do other things within the site. Here we can see 134 sessions, 144 sessions, 134 on the home page, and then 120 dropped off, and 24 went to the next page, is about, disclaimer, contact, and so forth and so forth. So it really shows the movement of a user within your site. And again, it may or may not be very relevant particularly for you, but I find it a very handy tool to see what people are doing. Oops. Right. So, I guess when you first have your Google Analytics set up, it just tracks everything. So you may decide that, hang on a minute, I want to set up a specific view. I want to know really only what New South Wales visitors are doing, or I want to only know what Victorian visitors do, or I only want to know what, you can go a step further, what certain people within the age of 34 to 50 do on my site. So that would be creating a view. So the view is really another version of your property, which just allows you then within that view to filter down and to segment down. Creating a view is quite easy. all you need to do is go to the admin section, create view, give it a name, and obviously make sure you're in the right time zone and create the view. That has done nothing at that point. It's just created another view of all the website data. What you then need to do is go in and start filtering, or more importantly, segmenting. So here is how you create segments. Once you're in your view, and you see here, New South Wales visitors only, you can click on segments. And here you'll see a lot of things that you can click on, and where you can specify who or what you want to see in this particular view. For example, you may want to say, well, I only want to see the visits from people that are 35 to 44, that are female, that speak Spanish, and they live in Victoria. So you can really narrow down on what you want to see from certain specific visitors. And again, a lot used in e-commerce. If you really want to narrow down who you're selling to, or where you should, I guess, apply particular marketing dollars or marketing spend to really target certain groups. I hope that makes sense, because there's so much that you can enter and drill down on. It can be quite overwhelming. Now, creating a filter, and there's a question I think about how you can avoid some of the unwanted visits or unwanted data in your Google Analytics. Well, this is one way to do it. Creating a filter allows you to exclude certain IP addresses or certain domains from, I guess, muddying your analytics data. And again, I use the example of people in your office or a particular IP address, or sometimes websites do get unwanted visits from Russia or other places, which can really skew your analytics. Once you drill down and find your way to knowing what IP addresses or where that was coming from, you can then create a filter, and that will filter all that data out. And then you're back to what your normal analytics should look like. A little bit annoying when that happens, but it does happen. So these were the questions that popped up before the presentation. How can you identify incorrect analytic results? Well, typically it's a spike in any of the statistics. Generally, suddenly you have a lot of users or a lot of views or something crazy happening that's very much out of the ordinary. That would indicate there's a problem. And you'd have to really analyze the user's origin or the acquisition, where is it coming from, and then find a way to filter that traffic or that data out. What are the best metrics to use? Well, it's like any other, I guess, statistical analysis, the ones that will tell you most for what you require. In your case, or in the community practices case, which are typically block type posts, as I said before, you may expect a high bounce rate. You would expect the session duration to be approximately as long as it would take to read something. Therefore, a high bounce rate with a low session duration may indicate people are interested but not reading. I suggest active users, bounce rate, page views, and average time spent on page as the main metrics in this case. Are there any benchmarks? Yes, there are. In general, for block type or news type content websites, anything between a bounce rate between 40 to 60% is a reason to see what can be improved to entice users to increase engagement. Obviously, combine that with low time spent on pages, that indicates that users are not reading, and therefore you might have really good headlines but really poor content, and they're not really reading it. So I think they're the main ones in this case. Perhaps there are others, and feel free to ask. Okay, I'll get to that.
So Meg, you've asked, what does a unique page visit mean? We'll answer your question shortly. Thanks, Meg.
One of the other questions was about reports and can they be saved and rerun at any given time? Yes, they can. There's some really handy things. One is you can save any view that you've created, i.e. you may create a view within your audience that shows it between a certain date range for per hour or per week, and you want to see that every Monday, for example. You can then save that view as a report. Not only then, you can then also have that emailed to your email address at any frequency you like. So there is a little button at the top right that says share. It will open up an email sort of box where you can enter in the email. Oops, sorry. How do I do that? Here we go. Where you can enter in the email addresses you'd like that report to go to. You can actually specify the attachment type. I think it's PDF, even Excel, or a CSV. The frequency, so is that once a week, twice a week, every Monday, that sort of stuff. And you can even go down to, okay, well, we only want to do that for the next 6 months or 2 months or 3 weeks. So on any particular, as per the frequency, you will get that report emailed to you, so you don't have to actually go back to Google Analytics. I hope that makes sense. I think that's almost it. It is. So we'll go back to the unique page view. The unique page view, and I'll just pull that up, just one tick.
So whilst Peter's going back to explain the unique page view, just keep typing any questions that you have.
Why don't I do this?
Okay, so unique page view now.
Yes, so in real layman terms is that in this case there were 327 page views, but only 185 unique ones. The difference is a user may have had one page view 5 times, right? So there was 185 unique pages viewed, as in users viewing a particular page, but some users have actually viewed that page 2, 3, multiple times. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Peter. Any other questions, please add them to the chat box. So there's a comment being made.
Oh, is it there?
No, it's not appearing here. So the comment's been made by Kim. So specific people visiting a page, this is to avoid counting multiple visits by the same person, which would inflate the total number of visits reported. So yes, that's the same explanation. So thanks very much, Kim. Any other questions? So what we encourage you to do now is really, with that overview and particularly being in the extensionAUS community and then working with your own communities of practice, you can either contact Dennis directly by his email if you don't have access to the Web Analytics account. The administration can then add you as a user. Obviously, that's to do with your leadership group of your communities of practice as to who has access. But then just work out a strategy around what information you do require and use that structure that Peter has walked you through in terms of then dissecting and setting up the reporting requirements that you need by using the view feature, the filter feature, and the reporting feature. You can really personalize
In the segment feature.
And the segment feature. Yes, you can really personalize the analytics and what is being reported to your community of practice. And obviously we can continue to learn together as we go as the overall extensionAUS community, and we'll we'll keep on passing across tips and tools that we learn as this journey goes on. But this webinar has been really the first key opportunity that we're providing to have a combined look at the Google Analytics and its application for extensionAUS people in particular that have a particular need around communities of practice. The webinar, as I've said before, will be available. Please, at any stage, send through questions, not even in relation to the webinar, but you can email Dennis or myself direct, and you all have our contact details. And we will continue to add resource elements to this Google Analytics folder that will be created on each of the on the drive for the extensionAUS communities to access. As we don't have any other questions coming in, we hope you've enjoyed the webinar. We certainly appreciate Peter and his team putting the effort into providing the service to extensionAUS, but then also making their expertise available to us all. And no last questions? Well, we'll sign off the webinar now. Thank you very much for your attendance, and good luck with it all. And enjoy drilling down at the analytics and seeing the success of your work. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.